and we went all up and, scared the bears away, similar to training camp. I was like, man, we got to worry about animals and wildlife? No, because in our cabin at training camp, I mean, and Kelly knows it was horrible. I mean, we were all snoring, and it was thunderous at night, both to your ears and to your nose. But that was family camp, and then next, another thing that we do a lot is we work with Tijuana in the middle. You guys might recognize Brent and Flacco on the left. They're still there. I lost them. Tijuana's got them. They were supposed to go down for 40 days. They've been down there for like 80 days. I don't know if they're coming back, but while they're there, they're helping out about 50 guys at the ranch, work through drug addiction and all kinds of other challenges. And then this side, this is a new wing we just opened, and it's for the elderly disabled that don't have means to provide care and physical therapy for themselves. And so Brent's down there. And then the next one, Brent got baptized. So you guys met Brent at training camp. Well, let me tell you, he was touched by the time that we had up there just a little bit ago, and he decided to get baptized. And this is Brent again on the right. And then the last picture I have for us as I go light speed, that's my wonderful wife. This was a picture. I really like this picture because, you can't hardly see the heartbreak, right? You can't see the depression and all the low times and all the times where I just counted myself out, and I was just in the worst places, self-destructive behavior, a lot of the same valleys that many of us have gone through. You can't see it in that picture. And it just reminds me that God is faithful and he'll bring you through it. And so that's a wonderful picture. I just wanted to give a little bit of background about me. But all that to say is that really reminds me of how God allows us and we live portions of the word. We go through the Bible sometimes. And for me, after this side of a lot of heartbreak and a lot of hard times, I see the Bible so different now. I'll go back to a verse that I've seen forever, and Bobby alluded to, this week we're going to be looking at John 10:10, but there's another verse as well I have here. But when I go back to the word, it's like a whole different place. It's like I've heard this a million times, I've read it a million times, but it's never meant so much to me as it does now. And being able to be on this side of a lot of those valleys and being able to participate in these families' lives, it's the greatest thing ever. And I'm just so thankful that God allows me, through his grace, through his mercy, through his love, through his amazing patience, and so much patience. And now I'm here and being able to be used by him to fulfill, his plan for my life and his will for my life. So going into the word today, the message, Bobby, you had to have like a little breakfast with me to make sure I was, dialed in and wasn't going to steer you guys like, man, you guys have been here for 10 years. There's just this thought, it's like, or more. It's like, there's no way I can destroy all the work that you guys have put together in 30 minutes. Right. But then as the time approached and as kind of was like, and then I'm looking at my Christmas tree PowerPoint. I'm like, maybe I can destroy and just break. So if there's anything today that I share that's just way off base, just love me, forgive me, hug me, and that'll make it better. But the thing that Bobby was asked, so what are you thinking about talking about? And it was a thought that a friend of mine, kind of going through the Proverbs. If you guys like the Proverbs, there's for all the month, days of the month, it's a good one to use every day. Go through a proverb. And one of my friends was sharing one with me, and we'll get to it in a minute. But another part of what we're talking about today came from the breakout times. So those breakout times, the table time is so special. And at training camp, I was with Yaz. So I had Yaz, I had Marshall, and I had LJ. So we, oh, there he is. Okay, yeah, I was going to do an LJ. You got to be careful though. In training camp, he was ready to go toe to toe with the last guy that did an LJ joke, right? But But in any case, so I want to go to the next slide, and this is kind of what the message is about, and it's don't be a tool. Don't be a tool. And you can add some other, don't be a blockhead, or, and I mean, LJ's got some, he knows some Hebrew and Greek that he could share as well when discussing this, and makes it a little more profound. But don't just be used. Don't just be used and turned out. And I feel like in my life, there's been so many years when I go back and look at it, it's like, wow, that was just a wasteland. And how could I not see that? How could I not see that I was just being used as a tool? And so I just want to keep that in the in the back of your heads for a minute, and then we're going to go through a couple of scriptures and then come back to it. But in 1 Peter 5:8, it says this. It says, "Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone," which is you and me, "to devour." And that portion, like I said, I mean, I heard that a bunch. It just never meant a lot until my whole life was destroyed. Because you know what? He's an enemy, but it says he's a great enemy. He's a formidable adversary. And he's got some bad intentions, and he's roaring around, and he's looking for those opportunities to devour me. And sometimes when we just speed read and we don't slow down and stop the music and really understand what's going on in our reality, we just think today is a regular day. I'm just going to live, I'm going to work, I'm going to go do this, that, and the other. It's like, no, that's not the reality. Here, the Word of God is giving us a special insight that there's more going on. It's like Transformers. There's more than meets the eye, right? He's here and he's got bad intentions. And if you go throughout scripture, and I'm going to go super fast for Bobby's sake. He's going to give me the 5-minute sign of death when we're there. But on the next slide, we have a couple other names and comparisons that is used by the enemy. We know he's a roaring, a lion wanting to devour us. We know about the serpent, a wolf in sheep's clothing, the accuser. I mean, that a lot of these here in practice, we're always talking about that. The accuser, Bobby on many occasions, and many of the other guys teaching, talk about how the enemy's always trying to bring up your past, always trying to bring up your failures, make that stuff real, conscious in the moment, so that he works on our self-esteem, our self-worth. He's a deceiver. He's always trying to kind of take some of the truths and kind of twist it a little bit and turn things into something that they're not. The usurper, someone always trying to get around God's authority and steal us of ours. The evil one, he's the father of all lies and evil in this world. And on the next one, we have John 10:10, which was the verse where we're kind of trying to hone in today. And it says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they," you and me, "may have life and have it abundantly." And so now we even have another reference to our enemy. He is a thief. So on top of all those other things, he is here, and his motives are clear. He's here to steal from you, kill, and destroy. But we also see that we have someone else hanging around. So not only does this give me insight to in my life that, we're not alone. We've got obviously an enemy who's formidable. He's a great enemy, but we also have Jesus who's on our side. And Jesus is with us, and he has some, on the next slide there, when we start realizing that, we're not alone and there's more to this, then now we can start approaching our lives a little different. Because if we just fall into the, Switzerland and everything's neutral and everything's just what it is, and there's nothing more than that, then we become easy prey. We become that, the roaring lion sees that little, I would say cute wildebeest, but we don't have a cute wildebeest in here, and wildebeest aren't cute anyway, right? So when we get isolated and distracted and all the way on that side is when we become easy prey. So it's important to know that we're not alone. On this next verse, Proverbs 29, this was kind of what was lingering in my mind as we were having table time at training camp. And that's Proverbs 29:24. The accomplices of thieves are their own enemies. They are put under oath and dare not testify. And this was really interesting because the thought is, wow, you have a thief, but now you have an accomplice. You have, and the accomplice of the thief is his own worst enemy. And something just real quickly, but I don't want to focus too much on it. It says when they are put under oath, being put under oath is our privilege, it's our right, it's our authority. If we go to a court and they put us under oath, that is our privilege to testify. That is our moment where everything that we're testifying against has the authority of the court. But we see here, if I become an accomplice to the thief, and we already know who the thief is, right? Because we just looked at it, the enemy. Guess what I lose? I'm not going to testify. I lose my privilege. I use, like when I'm looking at my kids, I got big kids. I got one daughter, a 7-year-old, but I've got a 19, a 20, and a 22-year-old. And, you know, how am I going to go after them on certain areas of their life when I'm just as bad or worse, right? And that's what this is what this word is saying. It's like, hey, that's why it's important. Don't lose your privilege, your authority, even in your own household, just because you've become an accomplice of the thief. And it sounds pretty direct and simple, but and you would think it's very avoidable. But what I've lived in my life, so many times I have become the accomplice of the thief. And that's kind of where we're going to start to focus in. What is a thief? Well, it's in Greek is klepto, and it's been used 75 times. It's someone who steals something belonging to another person, in many cases, unexpectedly with stealth. I love the fact that it's klepto because that's where we get kleptomania from. And so I put on there on the next slide there that Satan is a textbook kleptomaniac. Kleptomania is the reoccurrent inability to resist urges to steal. Like he can't even help himself. The thief, our enemy, kleptomania is a rare but serious one. He's a head case, and he is going to keep coming, you know, time after time. That's who he is. He is a thief. And so we have to know our enemy, right? We have to know our enemy. We have to know who we're dealing with, and we can't ignore our enemy. Half the stuff that I got myself into was just ignoring the fact that an enemy even existed. But it's been said that to win a war, you must first know who your enemy is and how he operates. Charles Baudelaire said, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And Ken and me followed up that saying, the second greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he is the good guy. And I mean, we've talked about some cultural issues, even, you know, in our breakfast with Bobby, and we got, you know, little girls thinking they're boys, and we got all kinds of other, you know, and political stuff. Like it's all across the board, but our culture is changing. And here, Ken and me saying, hey, the second greatest trick was convincing all this stuff that's really bad is good. And we see that all across the United States and other countries. But we need to understand that we're at war. Put on there, gentlemen, we are at war. We're not in peacetime. We're not at downtime. We're not furlough. You know, we're not on vacation, and it's not just any normal day. Every single day we are in the middle of the battlefield. And the moment we don't think that, or we might, oh yeah, you're right, but not really live that, is a moment when we become prey to the enemy. When that, you know, every moment that we do not realize that we are engaged in warfare is the moment where we are most vulnerable to be trapped, to be snared, to be distracted, to be, you know, led off astray. And then, just like the word says, there is a way that seems right to man, but its end is death. Its end is death. Don't look at how the wine glistens in the glass, because in the end, it'll bite you like a serpent. I mean, there's things that just seem okay, and it's just little by little by little, but in the end, it just destroys your life. And that's what the thief wants to do. He's come to steal from you, to kill you, and to destroy you. But we know we're engaged in warfare because all we have to do is go to Ephesians 6. In Ephesians 6, 11 through 13, it says, put on God's complete armor, then you'll be able to stand firm against the devil's trickery. And that's where we've got to start locking into. We have an adversary, and he's not a straight shooter. You know, here we're straight shooting at Chuck, right? I mean, there's no holds barred. It's just bam, bam, Chuck, bam. But our enemy is he's doing little tricky things. He's playing with your mind. He's doing mind games. He's playing with the circumstance. He's whispering in your ear. He's setting you up. He's making you feel great about something that's really gonna destroy your life. In verse 12, it says, the warfare that we're engaged in, you see, isn't against flesh and blood. It's against the leaders, against the authorities, against the powers that rule the world in this dark age. It's against the wicked spiritual elements in the heavenly places. And here's you talk about being, we are in warfare, but the thing that jumps out to me on this is it isn't against flesh and blood. So many times I thought my warfare that I'm engaged in was with that beautiful wife, because she won't change and she always this and she, and stuff like that. I'm thinking it's against her. I'm thinking it at work. I'm thinking it's against the other company or the people that I'm working with. I'm thinking it's against my child. I'm thinking it's against them, but the war isn't against them. They could be being used by the enemy just as I've been used by the enemy so many times, right? The war is against the intellectual author behind the crime, the guy trying to orchestrate against us, the general of the other army. It's not against the person we see in front of us. It's against these leaders, against the authorities, against the powers that rule the world in this dark age, against the wicked spiritual elements in heavenly places. In verse 13, it says, for this reason, we must take up God's complete armor. Then when wickedness grabs its moment, do you think wickedness is going to grab its moment? It's grabbed its moment with me many, many times. And today will be no exception. And tomorrow will be no exception. And we don't have time to go into, hey, what is God's complete armor? And all that, which is a great, I know we've touched on different things, the sword, the word, the shield and everything. But we need to know that we have to be intentional about this battle. That's why when we say men's practice, it's time to get to practice, get to work. We got to be intentional about these things, because when we're not intentional is when we are our weakest. And it says this, then when wickedness grabs its moment, you'll be able to withstand, to do what needs to be done, and still to be on your feet when it's all over. And I tell you what, that's an amazing promise by God, because there have been many moments that I've lived where I was like, man, this is going to take me out. How in the world am I going to be on my feet after this? I mean, what Marshall was sharing last week with, this court stuff that he's going through, it's like there's so much doubt, there's so much uncertainty. The enemy's got, he's attacking full force. And you don't know if you're going to be on your feet. I mean, there's broken relationships with our children, family, friends, and we don't know how it's going to be on the other end. And in this moment right now, we are living situations that we don't know how this is going to shape up. We don't know if this is going to be it for us. I know, this year and throughout the pandemic, it's been a tough go. It's been a lot of people, sickness, also on work stuff. From a work side, I work with an investment group, and it's real estate based and everything. So the pandemic's thrown everything into it. And we're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay bills on the first. I don't know. But this is an amazing promise that if I start getting in the word, if I start putting on God's complete armor, when wickedness grabs its moment and when the attack is on, I will be able to withstand. I'll be able to get done what needs to be done. And at the end of it, I'll still be on my feet when it's all over. So our goal today is don't be a tool. Don't be a tool for evil, but rather be an instrument of good for God. Because all of those years and all of the heartbreak and all the times when I was in depression, guess what? I mean, I'm being just a tool for the enemy, but guess what? I'm worthless to my kids because I can't be a blessing and an encouragement to them. I mean, I'm completely destroyed. But once we start seeing God's words, once we see, hey, this life has a couple more players on the field than what we were, it's not just us and it's not just something normal, regular. And once we start getting into the word and seeing, oh, okay, now I know I've got an adversary I need to deal with. I have a God I need to run to. I've got his word that I need to trust, learn, and put in my heart. Then I start putting the pieces together, because when we start putting the pieces together in our own lives, we start realizing that with our adversary, everything he does, he's a spiritual being. He isn't like us that can walk in here and pick stuff up and everything. We start understanding through his word that everything he accomplishes has to be an inside job. He has to have an accomplice. He has to have somebody that's going to help him carry out his plan, what he is wanting to accomplish. He needs our help. And when you start realizing that it's an inside job, and it's not my wife that I'm warring with. My wife might be being used. More than often than not, I'm being used. And she's having to deal, with me, but she, what we would love is for her to understand that, no, there's an adversary at work as well. And when we look at what is an inside job and start to understand how that works, well, an inside job is a crime committed with the assistance of a person living or working on the premises where it occurred. Note, the person assisting may or may not be aware they are assisting the intellectual author of the crime. And I love, I got YouTube TV. I love all the docudramas, all the heists. I was watching the Boston heist, and any Bostonites here? I don't know. Okay. Oh, Chuck. Wow. But okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Any others? One that might count. Okay, we got one that counts. Okay. No, just kidding. But you think about all of these heists over time, and they're all these inside jobs, right? And it required someone living there, working there. And the other thing that is so noteworthy for me is they may or may not have even been aware. There's huge heists that have gone on that's been an inside job, and the person at the counter didn't even know that they were helping this thing go. And I identify with that, because I would tell you right now, what I know now, and being able to look back and see how things developed in my own life, I'd be like, oops, I was an accomplice to the intellectual author of the crime. And probably 9 times out of 10, I was not even aware. So what do you need? If you're going to pull off an inside job, what do you need? Well, I put some of the necessary pieces just from these scriptures. You need the intellectual author of the crime, the one who is, putting this all together, and the target of the crime, which in this case is usually us. And then the thing that we don't realize is the accomplice to the target, this accomplice to the thief is usually us as well. But the plan is our enemies. And we have to understand, when it says he's a great enemy in Ezekiel 27:28, we realize Satan is wiser than Solomon. I mean, he's smarter than all of us. So he's putting these plans together, and we've got, our dependence has to be in God's word and in God, because there's no way for us to match wits with this master chess player that's wiser than Solomon. But we also know that he has to execute the plan. And the execution of the plan is the part where he can't do it. He can't, because his blood boils for me, or his blood boils to verbally abuse my wife and to make her feel worthless and to just completely destroy her self-esteem. But guess what? He can't do it. He needs me. See, I'm special. I'm special. So he's going to get work in my brain, get me all worked up about different things and that. And then when I start going to town, my wife, I just executed the plan. I just became an accomplice. And we already read in Proverbs 29:24 that I'm my own worst enemy. I just shot myself in the foot. because I got distracted with a bunch of things that I thought were so important and I'm so right about, and I could be. But thank you, Jesus, that you didn't make a similar decision when it came to my salvation, because what you did was pretty unjust. You put yourself on the cross, and I was supposed to be there. And you were real patient with me. And look, I haven't been patient at all here. And later on, he invites us or commands us. He says, hey, from this same grace that you've received, pour that out. And I'm not doing that because I've gotten distracted. I've listened to the enemy. And we can go through the Bible, and we don't, obviously don't have a lot of time here, but I put a couple heists that the thief has performed over time. You got the garden heist, right? Genesis 2 and 3, and you got the fall of mankind. He was successful there. And who is his accomplice? Who is Satan's accomplice in the Garden of Eden? Adam. Yeah, I'd like to say Eve, but I feel like we paid for it, right? By the brow, we're supposed to work now. Everyone in here's got their backs hurting right now. They're having to shift positions, because it was a consequence that we would have to. The ground would be hardened, and we'd have to work by the sweat of our brow. But the garden heist, fall of mankind. You got the soup kitchen heist, where you got Jacob and Esau, and Jacob. And there the accomplice was Jacob's mom. You know what I mean? It's and just you hear the whispers from the enemy, hey, he did this, and it was her favorite son. And so the enemy, you can see they got away with the band of brothers heist. Wow. You got the enemy whispering into Joseph's brothers heads and everything, and they end up beating him up, selling him into slavery, shooting themselves in the foot. And then you got the garden heist part 2, where Judas is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he turns Jesus over to the Sanhedrin, right? So we know that our enemy has performed some pretty good heists over time. And I didn't put it on there just to save face, but the Worden household heist. I mean, there's probably been a part 1, part 50, part 1,000,000 in my household where I've been a part of a heist. But one thing that as men that we have to understand is it's not too late. Some of the reasons why I remained and stayed in these ruts and self-destructive behavior was like, well, I've already lost everything. There's that sense of loss when you've lost everything, when you just don't care anymore. It's like, why? And guess what? That's our same enemy, adversary, whispering in, reinforcing that, saying, hey, it's all gone. It's all for naught. How many times did I cry myself, asleep at night, sleeping on a floor because I didn't even have a bed, and my life in ruins. And I needed to understand it wasn't too late. And this next slide has a picture of my dad. My dad passed away in January this year. And to me, he's a great example of it's not too late. Because he made some great decisions, but he also made some bad decisions. And a while ago, back in 2000, so 22 years ago, he was basically just living in a basement outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And you talk about, working at just a group home for mentally disabled kids, and just worked, came back to the basement. Me and my brother, his only kids, were out here, and he was just wasting away. And he had years like that. And I just remember that me and my brother, and this is why it's not too late. And if you have a broken relationship, if you have something with your kids, with other people that's been a while, and it seems like it's a lost cause, keep trusting the Lord, because there was a day where me and my brother's heart was just broken, and I got on a one-way ticket to Nashville, and I just brought my dad back. And, there could have been a million reasons why I shouldn't have brought him back, why he deserves what he's got. There could be a million reasons why the broken relationship right now that you're experiencing, is your fault. There's a lot of blame to go around, and trust me, I know. But there could be some things on your end of that deal that you got to own and you can't make right. But when you trust in the Lord, he moves mountains. And I remember going out there and I just seeing him, and I was just thinking, man, this is the last. He's probably not even going to last another year. He was just in that bad of shape. And he was a young guy, but he lived life hard. He rode the roller coaster full speed. And there was moments in his life where he did amazing things for God, but then there was moments in his life where he became the accomplice and became his own worst enemy and destroyed his family. And he could never get over that. But I remember bringing him back, and I remember on his mirror, there was a verse. And I think I have it up there. It's in Joel. But it's like, he says, don't tear your clothing in your grief, which was their custom to do, but tear your heart instead. Make it real. Return to the Lord your God, for he is merciful and compassionate. He's slow to anger and filled with unfailing love. And then to top it off in verse 24, it says, the Lord says, I will give you back what you lost. To the swarming locust, to the hopping locust, to the stripping locust and the cutting locust. And you're like, why are there so many different locusts? Because, man, when life and the enemy tears you up, they get you from every angle. They get you the swarming and just the barrage. They get you to the unachievable, unattainable, the hopping locust. They get you the stripping where you lose everything. It takes everything away. And then, of course, death of 1,000 cuts, right? It's the worst way to die. But this promise is, hey, just return. It's never too late. Right now, that's our choice. Now, every Sunday, I'd go to his house at night, and he would watch the Spanish service. He doesn't speak a word of Spanish. I mean, he's from Rochester, but most of his, which explains everything, right? But and I would fast forward it. I'd like hear the music, then kind of fast forward because it's like he's not going to understand the message. And it's like, oh, it's like I want to watch every second. One of his heart's desires was to have a church. He had pastored a church for a short time until everything, but he wanted to have a church where the people received themselves and accepted themselves and wasn't a super judgmental, legalistic, who's better dressed, better reputation church, but one that was just broken, honest, open, transparent, together. Like Dan said up here, we go through the good, the bad, the ugly, and then repeat, and we do it again, and we do it together. That's what he could see that. Even though he couldn't understand the language, he could understand the heart. And so it's the greatest thing, because I'll give you back what you thought you lost. And not only did he get that back in the congregation, but for the last 22 years, he got his kids back. We got to spend so many wonderful moments. And I know there's, I heard it. I hear it throughout the weeks and last week, and even in our breakout time with Nacho. Nacho was at Sunday for Father's Day with us over there in the Spanish church. That was good. But it's about forgiving. And Nacho was telling us in the breakout times, like, man, I just had to forgive people. Because those chains, just wait for someone to realize how bad they hurt me. Man, you're going to be waiting for a long time. And that's where the bitterness and that's where everything else comes in. And we fall prey again to the thief, to this intellectual author carrying out, executing his plan once again. So special ops team, in our mission brief today, we're not alone. Yes, we have an enemy, but we also have God on our side. And if God be with us, who can stand against us? I know you will be afflicted in this world, but don't worry. I'm greater. The one who is in you is greater than he that is in the world. But we need to know our enemy. We got to be intentional about it. That's what practice is all about, is intentional, getting in there and get it done. We are at war. It is no less than a war. The enemy is there to kill you and to steal everything you have, starting with your peace, starting with your self-worth and all the plans that God wants to accomplish in and through you. It's an inside job, and more likely than not, he'll use other people, and that's why our battle's not against flesh and blood. When I see the enemy using other people and they're the vehicle that offends me, that hurts me, I've got to look beyond them and their behavior and see, man, these guys are just puppets in a play. The puppeteer's back there pulling some strings. So I need to love this person. That's why Jesus was so easy to, he always talked about, no, bless your enemies, love you. He's on the cross, dying, being spit on, disfigured beyond recognition, and the thing that comes out of his heart or out of his mouth, because from the abundance of our heart speaks our mouth. He said, forgive them, Father, they do not know what they're doing. It's an inside job. And no matter how much you've lost, no matter how long it's been, it's not too late. God's still got us right here. And he's got that promise in Joel 2. He's got the promise. Hey, just come back. My love is unfailing. I've got mercy, compassion. All that stuff you think is impossible, all those years that you lost the crops, all that money, those relations, all of that, come back and I will make you whole again. So our table time questions today. There should be a next slide there. When was the last inside job the enemy used me on or you on? And was I aware? Was I a knowing and willing participant? Was I aware or not? And describe the heist. What was that situation? And then the third question is, how will I avoid being used by the enemy in the future? And I have a quote from Yourself to Yourself that says, if we do not learn to catch ourselves, we will continue to fall into the same traps over and over again. On the next slide, there's a quote. There it is. Yourself to yourself. If we do not learn to catch ourselves, we will continue to fall into the same traps over and over again. And with that, guys, it's practice time. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really good. I told Aaron to put this last slide up because I know there's men in this room and you're just like, yep, 1, yes, number 2, yes, number 3, absolutely number 4. But number 5, I don't know. There's some of you guys in this room. When you read number 5, you're like, yeah, Bobby, but you don't know my story. You don't know my past. You don't know what's going on. You're right. Maybe I don't. But the story I do know is the story that Solomon just broke down of the love of Jesus Christ and the penalty he paid for me and you on the cross. To where he's like, no, I know what's going on, and it's not too late, because the enemy wants to remind you that it's too late. It's long gone, man. Guys, it's over. You can't repair. The enemy constantly reminding us, number 5, that it's too late. And by the grace and the love of Jesus Christ, he says, no, I want to use your mess for ministry. I'm going to use what you're going through. So anyways, great job, Solomon. That was beautiful. Thank you, sir. So for the guys that go out, and we are run a little late, if you have to bail, but if not, table time.